2024 Rove R3 LD. Page 117. This is chapter Probability and Randomness of Steven Pinker's Rationality, what it is, why it seems scarce, why it matters. We're in the section defining what is probability, what does probability mean. Alright, bottom of page 117. As we saw in chapter 1 with Linda, and we'll see again in the next chapter, reframing a probability from credence in a single event to frequency in a set of events can recalibrate people's intuitions. A prosecutor in a big city who says the probability that the DNA on the victim's clothing would match the DNA on the suspect if he were innocent is 1 in 100,000 is likelier to win a conviction than one who says out of every 100,000 innocent people in the city, one will show a match. The first feels like an estimate of subjective doubt that is indistinguishable from zero. The second invites us to imagine that falsely accused fellow together with the many other people living in the metropolis. People also confuse probability in the frequentist sense with propensity. Gerd Gidjarnser recounts a tour of an aerospace factory in which the guide told the visitors that its Ariane rockets had a 99.6% security factor. They were standing in front of a poster depicting the 94 rockets and their histories, 8 of which crashed or blew up. When Mr. G asked how a rocket with a 99.6% security factor could fail almost 9% at the time, the guide explained that the factor was calculated from the reliabilities of the individual parts, and the failures were the result of human error. Of course, what we ultimately care about is how often the rocket slips the surly bonds of Earth or buys the farm, regardless of the causes. So the only probability that matters is the overall frequency. I must not be understanding that. Because if you put a blind person in a car and they crash it, and that was, let's say, a human error, or just anybody in a car and they crash it, whereas if all the individual parts except for the human part were reliable, unless they're talking about the result of human error in the construction or something, or the maintenance by the people who built it. What? By the same understanding, people sometimes wonder why a popular candidate who is miles ahead in the polls is given only a 60% chance of winning the election, when nothing but a last-minute shocker could derail him. The answer is that the probability estimate takes into account last-minute shockers. I don't get it, Pinker. You don't even tell us what a security factor is. I mean, we assume that it's like we have some loose intuitive sense of what it might mean. So the security factor, Mr. G says the security factor wants the security factor to indicate the frequentist, but so it wants it to be a 99.6 in the frequentist sense. But the guide was like, oh, no, I'm just talking about the propensity of the parts. Anyway, section probability versus availability. Despite the difference in interpretations, probability is intimately tied to events as a proportion of opportunities, whether directly in the classical and frequentist definitions or indirectly with the other judgments. Surely, whenever we say that one event is more probable than another, we believe it will occur more often given the opportunity. To estimate risk, we should tally the number of instances of an event and mentally divide it by the number of occasions on which it could have taken place. Yeah, one of the signature findings in the science of human judgment is that this is not how human probability estimation generally works. Oh shit, how would that even evolve? God, y'all really think y'all are souls. How would that evolve to like have an it that like tallies, has a perfect record or near perfect record of the number of instances that the event happened, and then is able to has an it that can imagine somehow all the different number of occasions on which it could have taken place, and then is going to do that division. You could Evolution could get away with such a simpler system, and doesn't have to be perfect, bro. Yet one of the signature findings in the science of human judgment is that this is not how human probability estimation generally works. Instead, people judge the probability of events by the ease with which instances come into mind, a habit that Tversky and Kahneman called the availability heuristic. Yeah, bro. All you need is to send out a call for thoughts of when this instance happened. So any instances that maybe they're recent, in which case it's a combination of the recency illusion and the availability heuristic, or maybe they were salient, even if they were from a while ago, there were some salient memories, whatever. The brain, there's an it that sends out a call. Yo, can anyone think of a time when this was true? And then if a bunch of its respond like, oh, remember this time, remember this time, remember this time, and you got just a bunch of dudes going like that, then there's an it that's going to go, all right, seems like it happens a lot. But those might be recent. Those might be, what was the other thing that I said? It's just salient. We don't know. We don't actually, it's not actually a reasonable sort of process by which the instances were recorded. It's not an impartial. We use the ranking from our brain's search engine, the images, anecdotes, and mental videos it coughs up, as our best guess of the probabilities. The heuristic exploits a feature of human memory, namely that recall is affected by frequency. The more often we encounter something, the stronger the trace it leaves in our brains, right? But also, salience is going to leave, and this is why we can't always, we don't know that it's actually about frequency, that these instances are coming up. Salience and recency are going to also affect the weights. So working backwards and estimating frequency from recallability often works serviceably well. When asked which birds are most common in a city, you would not do badly by tapping your memory and guessing pigeons and sparrows rather than waxwings and flycatchers instead of going to the trouble of consulting a bird census. That's right. This is the system evolution that came through evolution. It's not perfect. Obviously, it's fuckload. I just hate how right I am. Simpler than because I'm so frustrated that it's not like easy for the people that I talk to just stop imagining humans as these super thinking beings. It's just really frustrating. All right. So yeah, but it's good enough, you know. And I would love to be like, yo, human brains are amazing because they are. But it's just that human brains think that they're magic, and it's like, oh no 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 no. Okay, you're not magic. Remember, we're still animals. You should be comparing yourself to your dog, comparing yourself to a chimp, and go, wow, look at all the shit I can do that he can't do. Um, but there's a lot of shit that you can't do, and a lot of shit that you think you can do that you can't do. Um, Such as estimate probabilities. And you know that we're really far gone because of the way that we talk about other species. Like imagine a chimp. Um, it's learned some sign language and it goes, and then it meets a dog and it goes, holy shit! I think dogs are more rational than me. Dogs are more rational than us and me and you humans. I think dogs are smarter. Oh man, dolphins and like elephants, holy shit, they're like smart, dude. They're so incredibly smart. You look at that chimp and be like, they are, but they're not using sign language right now. They're not having this conversation with me right now. So yeah, they're like smarter than turtles, maybe, or smarter than frogs. Um, the only way that all the compliments we give like the next smartest species on Earth, the only thing that can justify that is if we didn't realize that we were animals ourselves, we were species, and we were just like, oh, we are magical souls, and look at all the beasts of the land. And then we just weren't even comparing ourselves on the same sort of scale. So then we could be like, oh my gosh, dolphins are geniuses. Dolphins are so, 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 so fucking smart. That like makes sense because we're not doing it on the human scale because humans are magical angels and it wouldn't make any sense to compare us, right? But then, should you ever imagine humans as being animals just for fun? Imagine that we're these like biological organisms. Then you go, dolphins are smarter than like spiders, but they are fucking idiots, and they're not fucking idiots. I'm sorry, because really, to for them to be fucking idiots, they would have to be bad at answering the questions they ask themselves. So honestly, okay, yes. No, Neo is not more rational than humans. Um, but it might seem that way because the his little projects, his questions he works on, he's pretty equipped to handle them. Um, I mean, he'll do stuff like I'm trying to put his leash on, and he keeps shaking or sort of taking a step away, and then I'll stand back up, and then he'll come over. Come on, get the leash on, and he keeps fucking moving. Um, but that's okay. He didn't evolve for that, maybe. But for like other stuff, he knows when to go drink. No, actually, he would eat way too much. He would be 60 kilos if food was always available to him. So no, bro, no, no. Anyway, anyway, anyway. So the way we get so excited about the intelligence of like a dolphin or a dog or whatever. Um, I want to get excited about human intelligence like that. But here's the thing: imagine dolphins had their level of intelligence, um, except somehow um, you knew that they thought they were like all knowing, perfect. They're all knowing and rational and all this stuff. I don't know what I'm saying. I just got distracted by a thought. The other day, there was an Instagram on Instagram. There was a reel of a comedian. He's doing stand up. Anyway, so in his bit, he says he Fuck, what was it? Talking about humans mating, like having kids or something. And I don't know, maybe a human in a story said something like, no, what was it? It was like, ah, fudge, I do not remember. Anyway, the comedian says, what? You're not a dog. You're a human being. No, he goes, what? You're a human being. You're not a dog. It's not just like a smell. You smell it and then you're just all over having the sex. You're a human being. And a dog, it's not just the smell. It'll be the smell and one or two other things, let's say. And then a human being is just a few dozen other things that are going to. But you are 100% an animal, and there is not free will. Anyway. All right, moving on. Um, For most of human existence, availability and hearsay were the only ways to estimate frequency. Statistical databases were kept by some governments, but they were considered state secrets and divulged only to administrative elites. With the rise of liberal democracies in the 19th century, data came to be considered a public good. Even today, when data on just about everything is a few clicks away, not many people avail themselves of it. We instinctively draw on our impressions, which distort our understanding whenever the strengths of those impressions don't mirror frequencies in the world. That can happen when our experiences are a biased sample of those events, or when the impressions are promoted or demoted in our mental search results by psychological amplifiers such as recency, vividness, or emotional poignancy. The effects on human affairs are sweeping. Outside our immediate experience, we learn about the world through the media. Media coverage thus drives people's sense of frequency and risk. They think they are likelier to be killed by a tornado than by asthma, despite asthma being 80 times deadlier, presumably because tornadoes are more photogenic. For similar reasons, the kinds of people who can't stay out of the news tend to be overrepresented in our mental censuses. What percentage of teenage girls give birth each year worldwide? People guess 20%, around 10 times too many. What proportion of Americans are immigrants? Around 28%, say survey respondents. The correct answer is 12%. Gay? Americans guess 24%. Polls indicate 4.5%. African Americans? About a third, people say. Around 2.5 times higher than the real figure, 12.7%. That's still more accurate than their estimate for another conspicuous minority, Jews, where respondents are off by a factor of 9, 18 versus 2%. The availability heuristic is a major driver of world events, often in irrational directions. Other than disease, the most lethal risk to life and limb is accidents, which kill about 5 million people a year, out of 56 million deaths in all. About a quarter of them in traffic accidents. But except when they take the life of a photogenic celebrity, car crashes seldom make the news, and people are insouciant about the carnage. Plane crashes, in contrast, get lavish coverage, but they kill only about 250 people a year worldwide, making planes about 1,000 times safer per passenger mile than cars. Yeah, we all know people with a fear of flying, but no one with a fear of driving, and a gory plane crash can scare airline passengers onto the highways for months afterward, where thousands more die. The SMBC cartoon makes a similar point. This is why people should learn statistics. I will not fly. I will not fly in a plane. They aren't safe from terrorists. Hold on, I'll text you an article about it. Among the most vivid and ghastly deaths imaginable is the one described in the song from the Threepenny Opera. When that shark bites with its teeth, babe, scarlet billows start to spread. In 2019, after a Cape Cod surfer became the first shark fatality in Massachusetts in more than 80 years, the towns equipped every beach with menacing Jaws-like warning billboards and hemorrhage control kits, and commissioned studies on towers, drones, planes, balloons, sonar, acoustic buoys, and electromagnetic and odor repellents. Yet every year on Cape Cod, between 15 and 20 people die in car crashes, and cheap improvements in signage, barriers, and traffic law enforcement could save many more lives at a fraction of the cost. The availability bias may affect the fate of the planet. Several eminent climate scientists, having crunched the numbers, warn that there is no credible path to climate stabilization that does not include a substantial role for nuclear power. Nuclear power is the safest form of energy humanity has ever used. Mining accidents, hydroelectric dam failures, natural gas explosions, and oil train crashes all kill people, sometimes in large numbers, and smoke from burning coal kills them in enormous numbers, more than 500,000 per year. Yet nuclear power has stalled for decades in the United States and is being pushed back in Europe, often replaced by dirty and dangerous coal. In large part, the opposition is driven by memories of three accidents: 3 Mile Island, 1979, which killed no one; Fukushima in 2011, which killed one worker years later. The other deaths were caused by the tsunami and from a panicked evacuation. Yo, aren't you doing the same shit that the guy at the... Whatever. And the Soviet bungled Chernobyl in 1986, which killed 31 in the accident, perhaps several thousand from cancer, around the same number killed by coal emissions every day. All right. Two things. One, France is very nuclear. France is like the most nuclear um, European country. Just a thought. Number two, um, what was this about? Back. Whatever. Number three though. So the last sentence. What would have been nice is to get you to give me the last two words before I tell you what they were. I imagine they aren't there. And so the Soviet bungled Chernobyl in 1986, which killed 31 in the accident and killed several thousand from cancer, around the same number killed by coal emissions every... You come up with something, and I'm guessing it'll be more than every day. Then if it is, that'll become your anchor. And thanks to the anchor effect, well, every day will be even more shocking to you. But if you didn't have to come up with anything beforehand, if you're just listening, every day is, kind of shocking. But all right. And also, I mean, like, we don't really have any sort of natural instincts for thinking about how many are killed by coal emissions. Um, so really, it would have to be how many wouldn't shock you? What amount wouldn't shock you? And then if for me, I would say like every month or every year or something. Availability, to be sure, is not the only distorter of risk perception. Paul Slovic, a collaborator of Tversky and Kahneman, showed that people also overestimate the danger from threats that are novel, the devil they don't know instead of the devil they do, out of their control, as if they can drive more safely than a pilot can fly, human-made, so they avoid genetically modified foods but swallow the many toxins that evolved naturally in plants, and inequitable when they feel they assume a risk for another's gain. When these bugbears combine with the prospect of a disaster that kills many people at once, the sum of all fears becomes a dread risk. Sum of all fears becomes a dread risk. Plane crashes, nuclear meltdowns, and terrorist attacks are prime examples. Like, that's not nothing. And I also am a little bit frustrated that people aren't moved. All right. First of all, I remember the second thing that I wanted to say. The second thing that I wanted to say is I came to France um, for the first time in 2002. So it was like 2 weeks in the summer of 2002. and it was the fifth grade. It was always the fifth graders that, every year the fifth graders get a chance. Normally, a bunch of people, a bunch of kids sign up, and a chaperone and the kids go, and each kid stays with a French family in some town in France. And actually, I don't know what the numbers normally are, but it was still 8 people out of 32 kids that went. But I remember there was a lot of concern because it was, just a few months after 9/11, and it was, when you had to sign up and stuff. And I remember even then I was like, but how do you think that's like gonna happen like again? Like I didn't I didn't really understand. And then the next time I came to France was in December 2015. So when I was signing up, when I applied for that, it was October or 2015. And the attacks were in November. Yeah. And so people kept coming up to me like, yo, you still gonna go? What? I remember a friend, I was like, hey, when are you gonna visit me in France once I was here? She's like, I'm gonna wait for things to calm down over there a little bit. What are you talking about? Oh my gosh. And when there was the attack in Nice, a truck driver, a guy in a van just mowed some people over. And this was uh, the 14th of July. Um, and and the person, I had been there for just like 6 months, and the program coordinator that had sent me over there, she was like upset that I didn't check in with her. What are you doing? You sent me to Paris. Even if I had been in Nice, like, all right, I get the instinct to want to check in with me. Um, oh my gosh. Anyway, gosh. And, all right, and then the other thing I was gonna say is, so when I was a kid, I read Freakonomics, and bro, it changed my life. I don't often talk about it. I talk a lot about thinking fast and slow. About Kahneman. But I think if I had to attribute everything I'm doing right now to one book, or if I had to attribute my path to one book, it would be Freakonomics. I was I was in a smart school. I was 12 or 13. I was already looking at the brain, how we read, because of that, that paragraph that had gone online in like 2003, the Cambridge University thing. That's what it said in the paragraph. And so, I mean, I was already going to be on this path, the ADHD, the autism, uh, and also just like I was always confused about sort of humans and myself, and I wanted to know about the whole how the thing worked. But it was Freakonomics that talking about all these really weird things about humans, and it did not match at all the narrative. How long have we been talking? It didn't match at all the narrative of humans being these like rational thinkers, and and also my dad. I talk about him a lot, being religiously atheist. I was like, hold on, I don't feel like you're making any more sense than the Bible thumpers. You just talking about, oh no, no, blah, blah, blah. Or yeah. Anyway, so I mean a little bit more sense, but so Freakonomics, and like, holy shit. And then when you read Thinking Fast and Slow, it's like Freakonomics plus the cognitive part. I mean, after Freakonomics, I read Unthinking, an old book by an advertising guy named Harry Beckwith. He was from the 70s, and it just talked about a lot of weird stuff about how advertising, about the way that you change subtly something, and you get different reactions from humans, different responses, different behavioral outputs. Then it was Predictably Irrational by Dan O'Reilly, a psychologist. And you can get from the title, so it's just more of this awesome, these weird freakonomic things. And then it was Kahneman. But if I hadn't, because of my classmates, read Freakonomics, well, okay, I can't really say, but my point is that how does that not, I feel lonely that other people aren't freaking out. Other people don't seem to be like David McRaney, brother. He seems to get it. Um he learned about this shit. He was like, "Holy shit." And has been writing books about it. But how do you I mean, I know that literally how one way is that we have the blind sight bias where you think that, oh, that's not me. But even with that, it's just like I don't know. How are you just not like, holy shit? Just you phrase this way, and life or death decisions are fundamentally impacted. And these books are like bestsellers too, so people have them on their shelves. How do you not just freaking out? I'm just gonna read that. The last two paragraphs again. I think. The availability bias may affect the fate of the planet. Several eminent climate scientists, having crunched the numbers, warn there is no credible path to climate stabilization that does not include a substantial role for nuclear power. Nuclear power is the safest form of energy humanity has ever used. Mining accidents, hydroelectric dam failures, natural gas explosions, and oil train crashes all kill people, sometimes in large numbers, and smoke from burning coal kills them in enormous numbers, more than 500,000 per year. Yet nuclear power has stalled for decades in the United States and is being pushed back in Europe, often replaced by dirty and dangerous coal. In large part, the opposition is driven by memories of three accidents: 3 Mile Island in 1979, which killed no one; Fukushima in 2011, which killed one worker years later. The other deaths were caused by the tsunami and from a panicked evacuation, though, still. And the Soviet bungled, so it's their fault, Chernobyl in 1986, which killed 31 in the accident and perhaps several thousand from cancer, around the same number killed by coal emissions every day. Availability, to be sure, is not the only distorter of risk perception. Paul Slavik, a collaborator of Tversky and Kahneman, showed that people also overestimate the danger from threats that are novel, the devil they don't know, instead of the devil they do. All right, let's you know what? Let's do the its for this real quick. All right, I'm gonna make a post a video soon with my it symbol. All right, so let's take a look. So this is the symbol, which you can't see. All right, so there's it novel. So, which is not obviously a name that would really work, but we can use that as a novel as just the shorthand for now in this context. So if threat novel, then avoid. And now, how is that determined? Honestly, it could be that if you're looking at the threat, does this threat at all look familiar? Does it feel familiar? Which can be maybe based on it can be based on, maybe not super reliable things. That one maybe one way the system does it, that you do it. Another way might be, can I picture overcoming this threat? And if you've already encountered the threat in the past, you may have already run simulations, you may have already overcome it in the past, or you may have failed to overcome it, but at least automatically you would have visualized afterward how you could do it. But if you haven't visualized before asking yourself the question, is it easy to visualize? Or have I visualized? then that could trigger the output of, avoid the threat. And that's just another hyping of avoid the threat. Whether or not you avoid the threat depends on the rest of the system. But that one, it novel. Again, we don't know how it judges whether a threat is novel, but however it is, some kind of familiarity, whatever, then avoid it. Um, or overestimate the danger. Or send out a "this is dangerous" vote. Then you have it control, which is assuming that the sit stem is a better controller than the pilot, which is obviously nuts. Especially the pilot doesn't have to worry about a whole bunch of other pilots. So that's another it that's in there that's voting that is going to make you overestimate the danger. Um, what's interesting is we have this it natural. We prefer things that like are natural. Um, I really like that one. So they avoid genetically modified foods, but swallow the many toxins that evolve naturally in plants. Um, and then also there's an it justice, which is like if I'm assuming this risk and I feel like you're getting something out of it, then fuck that. No, I only feel justified assuming a risk when I am the one getting something out of it. And that's it. And by the way, all of these are good it's, bro. It is a good thing to be more wary of a novel threat than of a familiar threat. It is a good thing to be more wary of a situation out of your control than in your control, just sort of in general as a rule of thumb. It is a good thing to trust like Earth and nature rather than another person. Um, I mean, the only reason we exist because we've been eating the plants and the stuff of nature. So obviously, yeah, there's a built-in a trust of it, and so on. What no, an animal wouldn't survive if it was like, all right, I'll eat these plants, but gosh, I'd really prefer to artificially create something that I actually don't even know how to create. And as soon as I see an artificial option, I'm going to go for it. Um, yeah. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, and then it is also tend to be good if you're assuming a risk for another's gain, be wary. So these are all great ifs. But then you see that they're not 100%, and in the 5 or 70% of the time when they're no good, because yes, it is possible to have an it that's only good 30% of the time, depending on sort of what that looks like, what the consequences are of when it is wrong, and what the benefits are when it is right. Um, and then you look at that and you get some pretty major things. All right, so we're going to see more of that, I'm sure. When these bugbears combine with the prospect of a disaster that kills many people at once, the sum of all fears becomes a dread risk. Plane crashes, nuclear meltdowns, and terrorist attacks are prime examples. Let's do some more. Let's go to the end of page 127. All right. Terrorism, like other losses of life, with malice aforethought, brews up a different chemistry of fear. Body counting data scientists are often perplexed at the way that highly publicized but low casualty killings can lead to epochal societal reactions. The worst terrorist attack in history by far was 9/11, and it claimed 3,000 lives. In most bad years, the United States suffers a few dozen terrorist deaths, a rounding error in the tally of homicides and accidents. The annual toll is lower, for example, than the number of people killed by lightning, bee stings, or drowning in bathtubs. Yet 9/11 led to the creation of a new federal department, massive surveillance of citizens, and hardening of public facilities, and two wars which killed more than twice as many Americans as the number who died in 2001, together with hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and Afghans. And I want to put how many more of them compared to the 3,000. Like, I mean, it's like hundreds of times. So not twice as many Americans as the number died in the attack, together with hundreds of times of other human beings. But, the human brain, it's just Iraqis and Afghans. It's like, you read that and that carries like half the weight, not even a fraction of the weight. In fact, it might even have a negative weight. It might be like, cool. At least hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and Afghans died. And that you have to know that that is a mechanism in your brain to not see Americans and Iraqis as the same. And you can justify that all you want, but you're full of shit. To take another low death, high fear hazard, rampage killings in American schools claim around 35 victims a year, compared with about 16,000 routine police blotter homicides. Oh, another thing, people talk about the police killing black people. That happens. It's not a big deal. Wait, hear me out. It is a symptom of something that is a huge fucking deal. And that is sort of in-group, out-group treatment and just, human brains being pretty shitty at judgments and reactions and interactions with strangers and stuff, and especially members of the out-group. And so the problem isn't the a few black men dying. The problem, that's just a symptom of the problem, which is the relationships between certain groups of people, whether that be poor black people in the police, whether that be colored people in general, regardless of their class or finance, and a police a police officer they don't know. I have this experience. I still don't understand what happened that night. And the problem is how many guys spent the night in jail because they had a joint, how many times, a mentally ill person who could have been controlled and handled with physical force ends up getting shot or not even shot. Sorry, no, I'm going back to the extreme situation. But that's a human brain for you. But it's about all the people that are fucked over. It's about the culture. It's about being afraid of the police. It's about Yet American schools have implemented billions of dollars of dubious safety measures, like installing bulletproof whiteboards and arming teachers with pepper ball guns, while traumatizing children with terrifying active shooter drills. In 2020, the brutal murder of George Floyd, okay, an unarmed... I don't want you to say that we're overreacting to the death, unless you also say what I just said. White man. In 2020, the brutal... And we're not overreacting to deaths, because if you just say that, oh, BLM and all that stuff is a reaction to police just being shitty, and sort of underestimating the value of life and of well-being of the black people in their districts, then yeah, and then the BLM, it's not an overreaction, it's great. But I just hate that they made it about the deaths rather than about the lives, the ones who have continued to live but have been really fucked over by the police. All right. In 2020, the brutal murder of George Floyd, an unarmed African American man, by a white police officer, led to massive protests and the sudden adoption of radical academic doctrine, critical race theory, by universities, newspapers, and corporations. These upheavals were driven by the impression that African Americans are a serious risk of being killed by the police. Yet, as with terrorism and school shootings, the numbers are surprising. A total of 65 unarmed Americans of all races are killed by the police in an average year, of which 23 are African American, which is around 0.3% of the 7,500 African American homicide victims. It would be psychologically obtuse to explain the outsized reaction to publicized killings solely by availability inflated fear. As with many signs of apparent irrationality, there are other logics at work in the service of goals other than accurate probabilities. Bro, a total of 65 unarmed Americans of all races were killed by the police in an average year, of which 23 are African American, which is more than 13%. But okay, because of financial differences, African Americans may be more represented in interactions with the police, okay, which is around 0.3%, so 0.3% of of black deaths in the year, okay? It would be psychologically obtuse to explain the outsized reaction to publicized killings solely by availability inflated fear. Oh, I'm not, why are we saying that those protests are an outsized reaction? Steven Pinker, you must understand that there is an issue. I mean, and it's just like, look at how people responded, how quickly they were to vilify Michael Brown or George Floyd or whatever. Bro, I don't know what to say, bro. I really don't even know what to. I don't. I am dissatisfied. Like, there's a big difference between the police shootings of black people, which are symptoms of police mistreatment of black people in general, and of poor people, sure. But black is such an easy indicator. Brains love easy indicators of potential threat. And so it's like media, blacks, oh, I just arrested a black guy today. Here's another one. Oh. And it's just not going to do that with white, because white just gets an exception because it is the standard, the normal. Because so even a black officer is, of course, going to judge blacks, and is going to have all these, reactions to a black guy. My officers were Latino. Um, because it's 13% of the population. So your brain is like, all right, so how do I recognize, or what do I know about members of that group? The brain isn't going to go, oh, what do I know about members of a group that represent 80% of the population? Um, Especially if you grew up, oh gosh. Anyway, so look, the billions of dollars on dubious safety measures, including things like, so well, not billions of dollars, but millions of dollars on bulletproof whiteboards, which, by the way, is not actually terribly stupid. You take it off the wall, you say, everybody get behind this, and then you hold that up to the door or something. That's pretty good, actually. But school shootings are only school shootings. It's not like school shootings are just the tip of the iceberg, but what you more often see are just a couple kids, uh, getting pistol whipped, on their way into the school. If that were the case, or if okay, it's not typical to have 7 or more students killed, but yeah, schools often tend to be built next to firing ranges, and so every once in a while there's a stray bullet or whatever. Then okay, hey, now you're not responding to the odd school shooting, you're responding to a more common, insidious, invidious, prevalent threat. You're a joke, dude. I'm upset by this. All right. Our disproportionate reaction to murder, most, our disproportionate reaction to murder, most foul, may be irrational in the framework of probability theory, but rational in the framework of game theory. Homicide is not like other lethal hazards. A hurricane or shark doesn't care how we will respond to the harm they have in store for us, but a human killer might. So when people reacting to a killing with public So when people react to a killing with public shock and anger, and redouble their commitment to self-defense, justice, or revenge, it sends a signal to the meditating killers out there, possibly giving them second thoughts. Like in some context that would work, but not with these population sizes and with no. Game theory may also explain the frenzy set off by a special kind of event that Thomas Schelling described in 1960, which may be called a communal outrage. A communal outrage is a flagrant, widely witnessed attack upon a member or a symbol of a collective. It is felt to be an intolerable affront and incites the collective to rise up and righteously avenge it. Examples include the explosion of the USS Maine in 1898, leading to the Spanish-American War, the sinking of the RMS Lusitania in 1915, tipping the United States toward entering World War I, the Reichstag fire of 1933, enabling the establishment of the Nazi regime, Pearl Harbor in 1941, sending America into World War II, 9/11, which licensed the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, and the harassment of a produce peddler in Tunisia in 2010, whose self-immolation set off the Tunisian Revolution and Arab Spring. The logic of these reactions is common knowledge in the technical sense of something that everyone knows, that everyone knows, that everyone knows. Common knowledge is necessary for coordination, in which several parties act in the expectation that each of the others will too. Common knowledge can be generated by focal points, public happenings, which people see other people seeing. A public outrage can be the common knowledge that solves the problem of getting everyone to act in concert with a vexation that is built up gradually, and the right moment to deal with it never seems to arrive. The unignorable atrocity can trigger simultaneous indignation in a dispersed constituency and forge them into a resolute collective. The amount of harm inflicted by the attack is beside the point. Okay, that's very good. Who's that? Schelling? Communal outrage. And then you need for that common knowledge, coordination, and focal point. That's cool. Not just beside the point, but taboo. Oh, the amount of harm inflicted by the attack is beside the point. Not just beside the point, but taboo. A communal outrage inspires what the psychologist Roy Baumeister, and we know him from the Zeigarnik effect. You can read that chapter. I watched that video in the Learn Your It's playlist. Communal outrage inspires what the psychologist Roy Baumeister calls a victim narrative, a moralized allegory in which a harmful act is sanctified, the damage consecrated as irreparable and unforgivable. The goal of the narrative is not accuracy, but solidarity. Picking nits about what actually happened is seen as not just irrelevant, but sacrilegious or treasonous. Interesting. So, on the one hand, so first of all, yes, that is an it that exists. I can think of examples where someone before George Floyd, after Trayvon Martin, but before, so like just after Trayvon Martin, my friend group and I, we were all black. I was the only mixed one. We would sometimes discuss some racial incidents. And Richard and I, the only two atheists in the group, were the two that would express a bit more skepticism. We would say, we're just curious about the details. We just want to withhold judgment. We don't want to say that the white person was racist yet. And I feel, yeah. And I get that now. I get now how it's important to have, when there's a problem and that hasn't been getting solved, it is good that we've evolved to grab on to an instance of that problem and make it like a point of outrage, and that we don't pick at it because we may never find the perfect story. I thought I could have been the perfect story actually, because with my thing with the police, I actually thought, hey, I thought my friends we were gonna rally together, because you can put me on TV. You won't find any. I don't have no record. I can. I was gonna say I'm articulate, but I'm having trouble doing. Anyway, um, I'm light skinned. I'm handsome. Um, there would be nothing to. Now, on the other hand, of course, I also understand the instinct to want to look at the details of a story, but and sometimes that is important. Was that guy actually racist here? Sometimes that bloody matters, of course. But the truth is that the human brain isn't super responsive to evidence. So, and also, like, if this is something that is going on, because all of us in that group chat, even if we couldn't agree on any particular story, all of us agreed there was a racism problem. Even my friend who was the most skeptical, he would always be sort of the most skeptical in these situations. But he knew. He's gone for a jog. He was a photographer as well, so he'd go for a jog, see nice lighting, take a photo. Police show up. Hey, you're taking photos of the houses. So he knew. We all knew. Um, and I almost wish that my friend Justin had known about the mine and gone, yo. First of all, I hate that you guys are picking apart this story, because that feels treasonous to me. Now, the reason it feels treasonous and sacrilegious to me is because that story is a great story for an actual real problem. And we don't need to spend all week debating this one dude and his belt purchase. We all agree that there's a problem of racism and judgment and law enforcement and stuff like that. And then if Justin said, "Oh, look, I admit that. All right, I can't say 100% that in this case Whitey was bad and Whitey was representative of all whites. Okay, I can't do that. But we just need to be running our communal outrage systems right now. That's great. Okay. At best, a public outrage can mobilize overdue action against a long simmering trouble, as is happening in the grappling with systemic racism in response to the Floyd killing. Thoughtful leadership can channel an outrage into responsible reform, captured in the politician saying, "Never let a crisis go to waste." But the history of public outrages suggests they can also empower demagogues and impassioned mobs into quagmires and disasters. Overall, I suspect that more good comes from cooler heads assessing harms accurately and responding to them proportionately. But do cooler heads do that? Or are they just out for the bag? Outrages cannot become public without media coverage. It was in the aftermath of the Maine explosion that the term yellow journalism came into common usage. Even when journalists don't whip readers into a jingoistic lather, intemperate public reactions are a built-in hazard. I believe journalists have not given enough thought to the way that media coverage can activate our cognitive biases and distort our understanding. Fuck yeah. And you know who the fucking worst is? Late night talk show hosts on the left. I don't know of any on the right. But mainstream late night talk show hosts. You got Colbert, Kimmel, Fallon, even Trevor Noah and John Oliver. Um, Maybe I'll put John Oliver, Trevor Noah, and Jon Stewart a little bit to the side. No. All of them. Like, jokes, you can't just, like, sometimes when I say it's terrible how convincing these guys are without actually any sort of real reasoning. It's often through little jokes. How many times are they going to make fun of the president's weight? And that has an effect on us. Calling him an orange fat fuck or whatever, that has an effect on our perception of Donald Trump. Um, Jesus, I mean, you ask most people, why don't you like Donald Trump? They'll maybe use some words to describe him. Say, okay, give me an example. They're gonna start slowing down, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few of them were just like, just look at him. Well, I don't know. He looks like a pizza. Some stupid shit like that. I think I already made a video about this or an audio. I don't know. Cynics might respond that the journalists couldn't care less, since the only thing that matters to them is clicks and eyeballs. Yeah, and cynics might respond that the comedians, their job is to make jokes. They're just jokes. Yeah, but the human brain is just a human brain. It is not able to like, okay, these are jokes. These are not going to have any effect on my beliefs, perspective, judgment, interpretation, or anything like that. These are all just being filed away as jokes. Cynics might respond that the journalists couldn't care less. Okay, let's take a breath. Hold on a second. All right. All the information is out there. Like, what the fuck do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? Stick around for another few decades to maybe write a book like this about, from the perspective of someone who is like fucking confused by humans? So I could have a lot of anecdotes about my human interactions and stuff. And then for what, though? For then in 30 years, for another poor kid to come along to read that, or whatever, and to read that, and or when I write it in 30 years, what I'm trying to say is, the shit is known. Why isn't it catching? Like, why aren't people flipping out? Holy shit, our brains, we are brains, our brains, our brains. And you still have people, and the smart people are the absolute worst. They talk about being rational. They talk about the irrational, unthinking mobs. Shut the fuck up! You are not nobody's rational. Now, look, if you're one of those people that are like, oh yeah, rational versus unthinking, I'm sure that you've been getting more familiar via this channel with the idea that maybe that's not the difference. Instead, what the difference it could be is epistemic humility. There are people who have more confidence in the things that seem true than other people, or yeah, there are people whose bar is a little bit lower. There's definitely a difference in epistemic humility. I'm definitely able to like someone say, I think this might be true, but it's only based on like blank, and I don't really know. And then other people who will just ramble and rant and all that and don't give you a single sort of piece of information or seed, a single possibility to you. So epistemic humility might be one example. Another example is honestly the quality of the interpretive mechanisms, um, which can be affected maybe by education. Um, so another difference might be than education, or if you not formal education, but if, for instance, hey, oh my gosh, is there someone out there, no formal education, but they have read about a lot about biases, they know their mallets. Anyway, what was I saying? So it's just like I can't even like contribute. It's not even like I can be like, yo guys, look what I figured out, and then maybe I can make this world hospitable to me. by getting humans to achieve some self-awareness and to go, you know, oh, I'm just a brain, can't trust all my interpretations. Okay. Shouldn't be sure of anything. Okay. Because I'm so ready to welcome other brains into this. I'm so ready to teach you. I'm so ready to teach you how to not know. How to, because I mean, sometimes I have the funniest conversations with people. They'll go, yeah, but if you're always thinking, then you never act. Um, literally, I guess, but no, but also no, you can, uh, like, or no, what do they say? Like, you have to just, they say some stupid shit like that, as though they don't understand that it's okay to act without knowing. In fact, we have to. In fact, we're doing it all of the time. Um, there are lots of things I just don't fucking know. And and it's so funny, like people will be amazed when I'll tell them I don't know something, like, I don't know. Okay, that's a stupid example. I was gonna say when an appointment is, but what's another example? Like, I don't know, just stuff. And they're like, how do you not know that? No, okay, that was a terrible example. What I'm or okay, let's say I'm driving with someone and they go, "What's at the end of that road?" I go, "I don't know." And but we're driving down it. What? You don't know what's down that road, but we're still going? Yeah, dude. I mean, like it looks okay to me. We can back up if we need to, and if we can't, we can figure something out. Um, I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, though, right? How people like it's like they don't understand how you can abstain from belief, how you can be unsure and still behave. Or like, fuck. What if someone asks me, like, is your girlfriend cheating on you? I might go, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? What do you mean? What do I mean? Do you, like, what do you mean? I mean, look, I don't go through her phone. Her time, I think, is, I haven't noticed anything. It seems to be accounted for. I don't really notice. I don't, you're lying to yourself if you think you can be certain that she isn't. What are you talking about, bro? Just, I'm okay. Okay that I would not love if she were cheating. But what are you gonna do? I'm okay not knowing. Look, I do have a brain that if I think it is possible to know something though, and it's like an objective truth thing, that who really wants to know? But except on the cheating thing, because I need her to tell me. I can't. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. All right. Look, the point is, I'm a brain. You're a brain, and I swear to you that I can catch you. It's really not that scary on the other side. Once you accept that we're not smart, we're not rational, there's a lot of shit we don't know, our own judgments, interpretations we can't trust. I get how it might sound scary, but I really think I can catch you on the other side over here, and I can give you the perspective, not even tips or tricks or information, just the perspective that you need to be okay being a human brain. Because in any case, you don't have the choice. You don't have a choice. You are a human brain. Either you continue to believe that you're a soul and be confused by other brains and by yourself and keep setting goals and having expectations for yourself that just don't even make sense with the brain, and keep trying things that don't even make sense as a brain, and keep trusting your judgments without even knowing your fucking biases, and not your personal biases, because we're not talking about, oh, I'm from this country, therefore I have a preference. We're not talking about preferences. What we are talking about are things like novelty, the effect that novelty has, the anchor effect, the salience, the recency, the availability heuristic, all that stuff. Okay? I'm so. Jesus Christ. If you're watching this, You might be the only person listening to this right now. Can we just have a phone call where you just like tell me, right? Like you ask me some questions, I explain to you I'm fucking tired of being here, and you give me the peace of saying, all right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm not gonna go end myself after that. It's about having a peace and a comfort and being able to focus on being happy rather than wondering, am I crazy for not being happy? Okay? Understand? Because if you tell me that, it's fair and reasonable for me to be tired and unhappy, then I still have to stay here for my family. So, but at least I can move on from second guessing my fatigue. All right. Cynics might respond that the journalists couldn't care less, since the only thing that matters to them is clicks and eyeballs. But in my experience, most journalists are idealists who feel they answer to the higher calling of informing the public. The press is an availability machine. It serves up anecdotes which feed our impression of what's common in a way that is guaranteed to mislead. Since news is what happens, not what doesn't happen, the denominator in the fraction corresponding to the true probability of an event, all the opportunities for the event to occur, including those in which it doesn't, is invisible, leaving us in the dark about how prevalent something really is. All we have is the fucking numerator, dude. And we're okay with that, but fuck. Shouldn't be. The distortions, moreover, are not haphazard, but misdirect us toward the morbid. Things that happen suddenly are usually bad: a war, a shooting, a famine, a financial collapse. But good things may consist of nothing happening, like a boring country at peace or a forgettable region that is healthy and well fed. And when progress takes place, it isn't built in a day. It creeps up a few percentage points a year, transforming the world by stealth. As the economist Max Roser points out, news sites could have run the headline 137,000 people escaped extreme poverty yesterday every year for the past 25 years, but they never ran the headline because there was never a Thursday in October in which it suddenly happened. So, one of the greatest developments in human history, 1.25 billion people escaping from squalor, has gone unnoticed. The ignorance is measurable. Pollsters repeatedly find that while people tend to be too optimistic about their own lives, they are too pessimistic about their societies. For instance, in many years between 1992 and 2015, an era that criminologists call the Great American Crime Decline, a majority of Americans believed that crime was rising. In their Ignorance Project, Hans and Ola Rosling and Anna Rosling Ronland have shown that what are those names? The family? Have shown that the understanding of global trends in most educated people is exactly backwards. They think that longevity, illiteracy, and extreme poverty are worsening, whereas all have dramatically improved. The COVID-19 pandemic set these trends back in 2020, almost certainly temporarily. Availability-driven ignorance can be corrosive. A looping mental newsreel of catastrophes and failures can breed cynicism about the ability of science, liberal democracy, and institutions of global cooperation to improve the human condition. The result can be a paralyzing fatalism or a reckless radicalism, a call to smash the machine, drain the swamp, or empower a demagogue who promises I alone can fix it. Calamity peddling journalism also sets up perverse incentives for terrorists and rampage shooters who can game the system and win instant notoriety. And a special place in journalist hell is reserved for the scribes who, in 2021, during the rollout of COVID vaccines, known to have a 95% efficacy rate, wrote stories on the vaccinated people who came down with the disease. By definition, not news, since it was always certain there would be some, and guaranteed to scare thousands from this life saving treatment. How can we recognize the genuine dangers in the world while calibrating our understanding to reality? Consumers of news should be aware of its built-in bias and adjust their information diet to include sources that present the bigger statistical picture. Less Facebook newsfeed, more our world and data. Journalists should put lurid events in context. A killing or plane crash or shark attack should be accompanied by the annual rate, which takes into account the denominator of the probability, not just the numerator. A setback or spate of misfortunes should be put into the context of the longer term trend. News sources might include a dashboard of national and global indicators, the homicide rate, CO2 emissions, war deaths, democracies, hate crimes, violence against women, poverty, and so on, so readers can see the trends for themselves and get a sense of which policies move the needle in the right direction. Though editors have told me that readers hate math and will never put up with numbers spoiling their stories and pictures, their own media belie this condescension. People avidly consume data in the weather, business, and sports pages, so why not the news? There we go, we made it to the bottom, page 127. Now, fuck off.